You're not going to believe this, but President Trump is floating an idea nobody saw coming. A gun ban, yes, but not the type the left usually screams about. This one targets an entire community, and while it might sound reasonable at first, once you look closer, it collapses instantly. Let me be clear before diving in. Talking about Trump is tricky if you don't support every move you're suddenly labeled as against him. That's ridiculous. When he does good for gun owners, I'll praise it. But when he pushes something misguided, we have to call it out. That doesn't mean I'm anti-Trump. I've backed plenty of what he's done. But blind loyalty to any politician, especially on gun rights, is dangerous. And here he's wrong. The context is a recent tragedy at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. The left reacted immediately, blaming Guns Magazine's so-called weapons of war. Same script, same demands. But what shocked everyone is Trump himself entertaining the idea of banning gun ownership, not based on weapon type, but on identity. Specifically, he's considering a ban on the transgender community. Now, some might nod and think, that makes sense. Their mental health struggles are severe. But slow down. We've walked this road before. During Trump's first term, bureaucrats were targeting veterans with PTSD, threatening their rights simply because of a diagnosis. Trump rolled that back correctly, saying it was unfair and unfounded. Veterans statistically face high suicide rates, yes. But so does the trans community. So why was it outrageous to punish veterans collectively, but acceptable to target trans people as a group? The logic doesn't hold. If we start banning groups because of statistics, where does it stop? Should white men lose gun rights because they're the majority of mass shooters? Should black men be banned because crime rates in urban areas are higher? Of course not. We'd never accept a law that strips rights based on race, sex, or identity. That's unconstitutional and absurd. And let's be honest, it's the same collective blame tactic Democrats use, the one Republicans claim to oppose. Yet here it is floating around again. Don't misunderstand me. Some people are so severely ill they should never own a firearm. But that's already covered. If you're adjudicated mentally defective or committed to an institution, it shows up on your background check. Form 4473 asks the question directly. The system already addresses this. What Trump is suggesting skips due process, assumes guilt before action, and lumps millions together unfairly. That's unacceptable. And let's talk about effectiveness. When you ban a group from buying guns legally, the determined criminals won't just give up. They'll go around the system, buy illegally, and carry on. The only people hurt are those following the rules. Law-abiding citizens pay the price, while criminals shrug off new restrictions. We've seen this cycle over and over. Tougher laws punish good people, but never stop those bent on doing harm. If Trump goes through with this, he sets a precedent that can be turned against anyone. Once you allow rights to be stripped from one group based on elevated risk, you've given the government a tool to come after all of us. Veterans, seniors on benefits, people on anxiety meds, suddenly they're all at risk. Think it won't happen? History shows otherwise. The door swings wide open once the principle is accepted. That's why this is so dangerous. It's not just about one proposal or one community. It's about whether we stand firm on the principle that rights are individual, not collective. Strip them from one group today, and tomorrow it could be yours. That's why this idea, no matter how it's framed, is wrong. Here's the problem that keeps getting ignored whenever bans like this are suggested. The people who actually follow the rules, the ones who go to the gun store, fill out the forms, and pass the background checks, they're the only ones affected. The criminals, the ones already determined to cause chaos, couldn't care less about new rules. They'll still get their hands on weapons through illegal means. That's been proven time and time again. So when a politician, even Trump, floats an idea like banning an entire group, what happens in reality? You punish law-abiding citizens, while the bad actors keep right on going. This isn't theoretical either. We've seen versions of it before. The no-fly list, for example. People pushed the idea that if you ended up on that list, even by mistake, or without due process, you should lose your right to own a firearm. Think about how dangerous that precedent is. Bureaucrats and politicians create secretive lists, and suddenly your rights vanish. That's not America. That's authoritarianism. And it doesn't stop there. There were proposals floating around years back about stripping gun rights from people who receive Social Security benefits. The idea was that if grandma needed some assistance, she should lose her Glock. Insane. We're talking about millions of seniors who've lived their whole lives as law-abiding citizens, suddenly told they can't protect themselves just because they get some help with daily tasks. Where's the logic in that? There isn't any. Another example. Medications. People suggested that if you're on anxiety meds, ADHD meds, or other common prescriptions, you should automatically lose your rights. That's not just misguided, it's reckless. Millions of Americans take these medications responsibly, manage their conditions, and live normal lives. To say they should lose their rights because something might not be clicking right is beyond absurd. It's a direct assault on millions of people who've never harmed anyone. And that's why this new idea from Trump feels so alarming. It's not just about the transgender community, although that's who is being singled out right now. It's about the pattern. Every time tragedy strikes, politicians find a new group to target. And once you open the door, once you say it's okay to restrict rights based on identity, there's no limit to how far it goes. Now let's dig into why Trump is even entertaining this. He's looking at it through the lens of mental health. And yes, mental health is a real crisis in this country. Nobody denies that. But banning guns from groups doesn't fix the crisis. It doesn't treat depression, anxiety, or suicidal ideation. It just assumes that stripping rights equals solving problems, and it doesn't. Take the trans community. Suicide rates are tragically high. But banning guns won't change the underlying despair, confusion, or trauma. If anything, it reinforces the idea that they're outsiders, unworthy of equal protection under the law. That doesn't heal anything. It deepens division. And remember, the same logic could easily be applied elsewhere. Veterans struggle with PTSD. Should they be stripped of rights? Trump himself said no back then. Why the change now? What really needs to happen is addressing mental health directly. There are over 400 million firearms in circulation in this country. Tens of millions of gun owners. Yet less than a fraction of a percent ever misuse them. That fact alone proves the problem isn't the gun, it's the crisis inside people's minds. Chicago, Baltimore, and other cities already have some of the strictest gun laws in America. Do they have lower crime rates? No. They have some of the highest. The correlation between stricter laws and reduced crime simply isn't there. And look at it from another angle. As gun ownership has increased nationwide, overall crime has gone down. That's the reality. More law-abiding citizens armed, more deterrence against criminals. Meanwhile, the politicians keep insisting that another ban will finally solve things. It never does. Which brings us back to Trump's idea. If he pursues this, he's not solving anything. He's handing the left exactly what they want, a precedent that rights can be stripped from entire categories of people. And once that tool exists, it will be used again and again. Don't think for a second that it stops with one community. It never does. That's why this has to be opposed not just for the sake of one group, but for all of us. Because once collective punishment becomes acceptable, no one's rights are safe. The more you examine this idea, the clearer it becomes that guns themselves are not the root of the crisis. The real issue is mental health, and it has been spreading across this country for decades. It isn't confined to one group. Since World War II, America has carried some of the highest suicide rates in the developed world, despite the Second Amendment. Meanwhile, Japan, with almost no gun ownership, faces equally high rates. That alone proves the tool isn't the cause, it's the condition of the human heart and mind. But politicians don't like addressing root causes. It takes work, accountability, and uncomfortable conversations. Instead, they reach for shortcuts. They target the tool, or they target a group. It makes for a strong headline. We banned this group from owning guns. It sounds bold, but it's a fraud. It doesn't make anyone safer. It creates a new injustice while leaving the crisis untouched. Look at Chicago, Baltimore, and other big cities. Some of the strictest gun laws in the country exist there, yet crime is rampant. If bans worked, those places would be the safest. But they're not. Criminals don't care about new rules. They never have. The people stuck disarmed are the law-abiding citizens. That's not security, that's surrender. So what actually works? Facing crime directly, prosecuting criminals, locking up violent offenders instead of releasing them with a slap on the wrist. Ending the soft-on-crime policies that turned great cities into danger zones. Disarming the rule followers while ignoring the criminals has never fixed anything. It only emboldens those who break the law. Yes, mental health must also be confronted honestly. The trans community has been singled out here, but they're not alone. Depression, anxiety, and identity struggles are widespread. Instead of dealing with the root, the system rushes to affirm confusion, medicate symptoms, and silence critics. That isn't compassion, it's negligence. It leaves people broken, sometimes permanently. Other countries are beginning to acknowledge this. Some are backing away from puberty blockers and surgeries for kids, recognizing the irreversible harm. Bone density loss, infertility, heart risks, regret, the list goes on. These are lifelong consequences handed to young people who might have otherwise grown out of temporary confusion. And when despair deepens, even after the so-called solutions, it shows we're not fixing anything. We're making it worse. That's the truth no one wants to say. And instead of tackling it, the proposal is to strip gun rights. That's lazy. Because if someone is set on causing harm, they'll find a way, gun, knife, car, anything. Evil doesn't disappear when you ban tools. Evil just finds another tool. If Trump pursues this path, the danger goes beyond today. It sets a precedent for tomorrow. Once you open the door to banning one group, others will follow. This group is unstable. That group is too risky. Eventually, the Second Amendment becomes a privilege granted to the favored and denied to the disfavored. That's not liberty. That's control. And that's why I say this idea is wrong. It's wrong morally, it's wrong constitutionally, and it's wrong strategically. We can't afford to borrow from the Democrat playbook, blaming objects and identities instead of dealing with the real problem. Because once the precedent exists, it will be used against every lawful gun owner sooner or later. So yes, Trump is wrong here. And it's our duty as citizens to say so, even when it's uncomfortable. Supporting a leader doesn't mean silent obedience. Rights are not about convenience, they are guarantees. And if we start carving out exceptions based on identity, soon we won't have rights left at all. That's my take. Now I want to hear yours. Leave your thoughts below. Do you think this ban makes sense, or do you see the same dangers I do? And if you value hearing unfiltered perspectives, consider subscribing. Until next time, stay sharp, stay free, and hold the line.